Hey, what's going on, guys? Kitsune TCG here, back with another video, and today we're going to be looking at a deck that saw a lot of popularity around, the Dimension Force format. Obviously, with the release of the Therions, they definitely added a lot of playability to several different types of decks. Obviously, with King Regulus being the best one, it definitely gave a lot of machine decks, and particularly ABC with its unique union capabilities, a lot more kind of playability, and just kind of that increased power level. Now, it did obviously suffer, in the post-Pote format, not really just being able to keep up with either Tearlament or Sprite. So now that we've obviously had the ban list, Sprite's lost Ronin Totem, Elf, things like that, so it's definitely not able to put up as many negates or interruptions, and Tearlament is all but dead. This deck can definitely kind of compete, post-ban list. Now, obviously, if you get zone locked, no deck is going to be able to recover from that, so you will notice that, pretty much every main deck sideboard is going to have some answers for that deck. So as long as you have a way, if you've drawn the Nibiru and they decide to go for, the 9, so zone lock, you're able to kind of punish them there. If they decide to stop, after they've maybe been hit by Nibiru, you can, side in the Lancius and they just can't banish any cards, so you can kind of protect your board that way. So, just a lot of different options that you have available to you to kind of try and avoid the issues with Kashtira. So, as long as you're able to avoid that, which again, like most decks are going to have to try and play around that, then you are definitely able to do something on kind of the crackback, whether or not it's going for game or just kind of setting up your own board there. But yeah, just kind of, hopping into the deck. You're just playing 2 of A and the C, maxing out 3 of the B. Obviously that is going to be your best one, so you definitely want to see that one the most. The other 2, obviously with the way this deck is able to search, you don't really need to max that on the copies, and you're playing plenty of other cards to get to them, with the Union Driver, and then unauthorized. You're basically playing essentially like 5 copies of your Union Hanger by playing the unauthorized reactivation, because essentially you're just going to be attaching Union Driver, whichever one you see, and then you're going to be able to banish that one to, go for your plethora of whatever you're missing. So few different ways to kind of get to those. Like I said, you are doing the 3 Union Hanger. You definitely want to, it would be preferable if you can see this and you have several different ways to get to that. You are maxing out on the King Regulus just because, if you happen to draw it, it does make going into any board a lot easier, but you do have several ways to search it out as well. 2 Disc Coliseum. The reason why you're playing 2 and not 1 is to, keep things like set rotation live. Obviously this is just an additional way for if you've drawn Disc Coliseum, or if you've drawn Union Hanger, it's just an easy way for you to get to the other one. From there, Adventure Engine, you're obviously going to be maxing out on this until any of the cards get hit on the ban list. 3 Water Enchantress, 3 Right, 1 of the Griffin Rider, and 1 of Legal Knight. Legal Knight does have some pretty good, matchups. Against Kashtira, unfortunately, it is a level 7, which is kind of a little bit of a drawback, but they are able to put 2 level 7s on the board. You can definitely be able to spin those back to the hand. It does give them this, which can be an issue, but, if you have like something like an ABC Dragon Buster or something like that as well in addition to it, you're pretty often going to be able to prevent them from going into anything. From there, you do play the 1 Terraforming. Again, essentially acts as a 4th or 3rd copy of your field spells. And then the set rotation is same thing. Just kind of acts as an additional copy for whichever one that you're missing. And that Foolish Burial, it can definitely look like it's just there for Water Enchantress, because obviously you're going to, if that is going to be the one that, you most often are probably going to be using it for, but if you have a, King Regulus in hand and perhaps, maybe not enough, like maybe you don't have access to any of the field spells, and maybe you have 1 Union monster in hand, being able to send, any one of A, B, or C to the graveyard, and then, you'd be able to get King Regulus on the field, and then obviously you're able to special any one of those. So the card definitely has more playability than just for the adventure engine, so I think that is definitely a reason why you would want to include this card. From there, 3 Pot of Prosperity. This is just going to fix a lot of your hands, just digging for whatever cards you need. Obviously, that's going to be great going first, going second, or even post sideboard. Just making sure that if there's a card that you have that you want to see in a particular matchup. Pretty often, you'll definitely be able to dig to find it. From there, you are playing some going second cards, just because if you see them going first, it's not the worst thing. Obviously, Nibiru, you'd still be able to use if you want, for going first. It does kind of hurt that if you have to use it that way, but it's not the worst. Plus, either one of them can just act as a discard for ABC, so it's not the worst thing to have in hand. And you'd rather have it and not need it than, end up having to go second game 1 and, losing it because you didn't have them. From there, the extra deck, you do want to max out on the ABC Dragon Buster. This is obviously going to be one of your best cards. It's something that you want to end on every chance that you can. Yeah, not much more to really say about it. It is definitely kind of the boss monster of the deck that you do definitely want to get out. And then with the ABCs being level 4s, you do have kind of a few rank 4s that you can go into depending on the situation. Something like Dugaris you can use. If it has obviously several effects, you can either draw 2, discard 1 if you need to dig a little bit deeper into your deck. You can special summon a level 4 lower monster if you need to. Or I think oftentimes the most common one that you'll use in here is to double an attack to kind of just go for game. Baguska is kind of the situation where you want to have it in the extra deck because it does help on some hands, but you never want to end on it. And the reason for that is, if you are going full combo, ending on your preferred end board, Baguska is not going to be a part of it because it would obviously hinder a lot of your other cards. But you still do need to have it in the extra deck because if you have just completely bricked, but at least you have access to maybe 2 names or whatever the situation is. You maybe you bricked on an A and a C. You're obviously not going to be able to get all 3 names in the graveyard. This at least just allows you some form of, interruption with your opponent. They're not going to, if you just put Baguska down in defense, you can pretty well expect them to not be able to play through that. So it just gives you something in case you have a really kind of just dead hand. From there, you are playing Merrymaker. The reason for that is because it can just immediately go into the Sargus, and that is just kind of another way that you can search out the King Regulus. And it also does have a pretty decent effect, being, if a monster is detached from an exceed, excluding the damage step, it can just destroy a card on field. So, against a lot of XYZ decks, that could be something that you do want to end on. Obviously Kashtira, playing things like Shangri-La, it does obviously have the protection effect, but, that does kind of just get the materials out from underneath it quicker, and it's, I don't believe it was once per turn. Okay, no, it was once per turn, but yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of still just a little bit of interaction there if you happen to end on it, but obviously the most important effect is just being able to search out the King Regulus. From there, you do play Zeus, since you do have a few XYZs in the deck. This is just going to be, one that, if you go second, you're just kind of able to clear the board. As far as links go, Platinum Gadget is obviously going to be your most important one, being able to summon a level 4 or lower monster from your hand. The Bujinki link is kind of just in here for, going into kind of Merrymaker if you need it, depending on your hand. You could definitely cut that for something else, but I have found that it has come up where, I'm 1 short on making Merrymaker to go into Sargus, and it kind of just helps fix that. IP is a really great inboard piece, being able to go into something like a unicorn. Obviously, you're not having to really fear, too many things that you would need to go into Phoenix, but if, you're perhaps playing against Labyrinth, just being able to eliminate one of their back row before it passes back over to you could be important. But usually, most times, you'd want to go into Unicorn anyway, just to avoid, because some of them obviously have some graveyard effects, and then, some import pieces as well, like Appaloosa, or, just to kind of finish games, you can go into access codes. So the deck definitely does have a lot of, capabilities, and, inboards can definitely look pretty different depending on, what your hand looks like. As for the side deck, you do want Lancia just because sometimes you will have your opponent avoid going 5 summons with Kashtira. There is a way to, kind of do some zone locking, only ending on 4 summons. So, if you've hit them with Nibiru or they fear Nibiru, you can bring in Lancia to make sure that they're not going to be able to lock out any of your zones. Raigeki is pretty good right now just because it does kind of deal with a lot of boards. Most boards aren't ending on a lot of negates, and particularly not a lot of spell trap negates, so that can just be an easy way to deal with your opponent's monsters. Lightning Storm and the Duster are obviously going to be there for your trap matchups, which, obviously now that trap tricks are kind of running around in the format, plus Labyrinth, you definitely want to make sure that you have a few cards to deal with any spell trap. And then just kind of some additional going first cards that you can sign in if you know that you are going first the next game. D-Barrier is obviously going to be really good against things like Branded, or, it does kind of at least stop the XYZ plays for Kashtira. And then, something like a Solemn Judgment, just an additional kind of negate. Never really hurts. So, obviously depends on the matchup, but yeah, overall, kind of been testing this one out as well. It's obviously, I wouldn't say meta. It's definitely, I would say, more of a rogue strategy, but with the right pilot, you can definitely, go very far. I don't think a lot of people are going to be expecting this deck, or, maybe not necessarily know how to play against it. So, again, if you are kind of well-versed in the strategy, you can definitely succeed with it. So, let me know down below what you think, what you plan on playing this format, how you've been feeling about the format so far. We're definitely essentially kind of 2 weeks or so into this format now, so be excited to hear, what y'all think about it, and I will see you all next time.